All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And it is Sunday, so I think I'm going to do one of these types of videos to where I don't talk about XDefiant, but where I have something interesting worth making a video for that I want to share with you guys. So I figured I'd do these once a week, and I think Sunday is going to be the day to do it. So this one is going to be about a pretty cool midnight release story that happened many years ago that I feel is worth sharing because as of yesterday, okay, it is early Sunday morning as of the time of this recording. And as of yesterday, which was Saturday, obviously, Halo 2 turned 20 years old. Now, why that's so special to me is because, well, one of the reasons is because for those of you guys that watched my top 10 console FPS multiplayer games video, Halo 2 was my number one. So, and there's a good reason for that. So I talked about that in that video, so I'm not going to repeat myself here. However, it got me thinking of the midnight release because Halo 2 was one of those games to where once the game was set to release on midnight, you know, GameStop, or was it GameStop? Yeah, GameStop had had their midnight release thing going, and every single midnight release that I ever went to, all the GameStop employees, bless their hearts, man, they did a great job of getting us in and getting us out as fast as possible. And I was very impressed because this particular midnight release that I went to, I believe was one of my first, if not my first, because it wasn't for Halo 2 to where that happened. It actually, my first midnight release was for a game called Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 in 2011. Okay, the original Modern Warfare 3 that came out after Call of Duty Black Ops. And it was at a time where I saw the Call of Duty XP event to where, you know, they promoted the multiplayer. They gave up those multiplayer details. Back in those days, you know, it used to actually be an event to where, you know, fans, just regular fans, it didn't matter if you were a big content creator or small content creator, whatever the deal was. You know, you could just be a fan of the game and you could, you know, get your tickets for COD XP or for the Call of Duty multiplayer reveal event. Obviously, now things are way different than what they used to be. It's still an event, but it's way different than what it was before. And I really kind of missed the way it was before. So the Modern Warfare 3 COD XP event is the famous one to where, you know, Robert Bowling basically said, fuck you, Last Stand, but they put it in the game anyway. So long story short, as a Call of Duty fan, you know, Black Ops 1 was like the first Call of Duty that I really fell in love with, that really got me into COD more than anything else. And you know, I was really hyped for Modern Warfare 3, and once I saw that event, I was really hyped. Like, I went to GameStop. My best friend took me to GameStop at the time, and at the time I didn't have a car, so transportation was really tough. You know, life was really tough for me personally at that time, so that's a different story for a different day. But long story short, I didn't have transportation of my own, right? So I was taking the bus everywhere at the time, and you know, I'd have friends give me a ride whenever I could to get to places whenever I needed to, if I ever had that convenience. And the thing is, my Xbox 360 was, you know, was intact and everything went well, right? Okay, so what happened was one day they had Black Ops announced that they would have a Nuketown 24/7 for the weekend, and I was hyped. I'm like, all right, after work is done, we get to spend the weekend playing Nuketown. I can't wait. I'm so excited. So I boot up my Xbox 360. And within a few minutes or whatnot, there starts screen tearing and all that kind of stuff. And I look down at my console. I'm like, oh no, please no. And of course, there it was. The red rings of death happened finally after like a few years of me getting my Xbox 360. And I thought I was going to be one of the lucky few that never got it, right? So it was a really sad time. So what I did was, and I didn't have any money, right? I had a ton of games. And I had my console, so I went to GameStop and I traded all those in, you know, my games and my console or whatnot. I was able to get a new console, but this time it wasn't the Xbox 360. I wanted a PlayStation 3 because, well, I was a big God of War fan and I wanted to play God of War 3, right? But I didn't get Black Ops, so it was just like, you know, whatever. I was just focusing on, you know, God of War, didn't care about anything else. And at the same time, remember, back then I was more of a variety gamer. I was still in love with COD, but I was more of a variety gamer. And, you know, getting a copy of Black Ops 1 didn't really, you know, I didn't really think about it. I was just focused on God of War. I saw this out as an opportunity. So I got a refurbished PS3 and then God of War and then, you know, just maybe, and then a few other games here and there over time. But I'd say about 6 months later or so, guess what? My PS4 gets the yellow light. I mean, my PS3 gets the yellow light. Go figure. So I ended up not having a console. Now, ever since watching the Call of Duty XP event, I went on and I pre-purchased, or should I say, pre-ordered Modern Warfare 3, right? And back then, all you had to do was just, pay $5, you get the receipt, and then you can show up at GameStop and then pay for the receipt, pay for the game at midnight release, or you could pay for it ahead of time. And me being a poor guy that I hadn't paid for it. I just put $5 down just so that way I can have a spot for the midnight release. And the earlier you pre-order, the more in front of the line you get to be in, right? Okay, so I pre-ordered it, but here I am with no money, no console, and it was really a sad time. So I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was working hard. Trust me, I would work anywhere from 40 to 50 hours a week. But again, life circumstances were different back then. So again, possibly maybe another video for another time, maybe. But anyway, okay. So we're getting closer and closer to the release of this thing. So I don't know what to do. So anyway, my best friend, who is still my best friend to this day, obviously, calls me. And, he's like, hey, I'll take you to the midnight release. And I was like, okay, I mean, I want to go and everything like that, but I've got a problem. He's like, what's the problem? I'm like, well, such and such happened. I explained to him my Xbox 360 story. I explained to him my what's going on with the PS3. And basically he said, I'll tell you what, he had 3 Xbox 360s, 3, because he's had one previously that got the red rings, and then he had another one that got the red rings. So then he ended up getting even a new one while the other ones were repairing. And basically he ended up with 3 functioning Xbox 360s. And he said, hey man, listen, I'll give you one of my 360s and a controller for $50. And we can go to the midnight release, you can get the game, we'll play, all that good stuff. And I was like, you serious? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you're not messing with me? He's like, no, I'll give you one of my consoles for and a controller for $50. And I was like, wow, I was just absolutely shocked. And if that wasn't enough, he gave me his old headset as well. He had gotten a new wireless one at the time. And back then, wireless headsets were basically like a rarity, right? They weren't as nearly as many as there were today. And of course, you can bet he paid top dollar for it, right? And he had the little stand on it and everything, the recharge, you name it, right? This was back in the day, right? So anyway, he gave me his old headset. This was even before I discovered sound whoring, which I didn't really use the headset, to be honest with you, because I didn't know any better. But anyway, so I was like, wow, yeah, absolutely. So the day of the midnight release finally comes, and since it was the first one I ever went to my knowledge, to my recollection, we pull up to the GameStop, right? Which isn't actually in my area. It's closer to his area, but it doesn't matter. It's not too far away anyway. So we go up to the GameStop, and I see anywhere from 150 to 200 people of all walks of life around this building at this time of night. I thought it was crazy. I was like, wow. But it was also a very fun experience, because for the first time ever, I saw with my 2 eyes that, okay, I really am not alone in this, right? There's so many people that a lot of them are even older than me. I saw a family of 3 walking out with like special editions of the game. Like one of them walked out with the big box, with the Modern Warfare 3, Xbox 360, which was like a really cool looking one. It was silver, and it was, and it was also the newer model. So anyway, but like I saw the dad walking out with the big box and the game, of course, and his 2 kids, who were either in elementary school or middle school, that were walking out with the hardened edition. And I was like, holy crap, man. I looked everywhere. I saw people of all sorts of walks of life, all ages. And I was like, okay, this is going to be absolutely huge. And it was. It almost felt like I was at the Call of Duty XP. You know what I mean? So even with that being said, I don't remember what spot in line we were, but all I know is by like 12:30 at the very latest, we were out of there, right? So I don't remember what spot we were in, but it was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. And I remember, we were going home. I kept on looking at the cover, kept on looking at the back. I couldn't wait to go home. And I hadn't booted up the 360 yet, because he gave it to me on that same day as we were on our way back to my place. And basically we had a little bit of a conversation, by the time I left, to go back in the house. So, and then he had to drive home and boot his shit up. And then, I didn't even have an Xbox account. So I ended up, getting one of those Xbox 360 live accounts, or however it was, for a cheap price. And that is when I created the gamer tag that you guys see today. As a matter of fact, you guys usually see on XDefiant, you see a Jack of all trades. And for whatever reason, the Jack of all trades account is what you see, even though it's on the Justice X7 account. But I guess that's a Ubisoft, account, XDefiant thing. But But the Justice X7 account was that day. It was created that day on the Modern Warfare 3 midnight release. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to call my name, and the X7 comes from the my age, because back then I was 27 years old when I got that account. So that was 13 years ago when that took place. And it was one of the happiest times of my gaming life because I had experienced my official first midnight release. It was for Modern Warfare 3, and I knew what I was going to get in the disc because I saw the Call of Duty XP event. Call of Duty was a lot more pure back then. You know, you had your assault, support, and specialists. It's like, and it was also one of the multiplayers to where I think I went back and played the campaign a little bit later. It was the first Call of Duty to where I started playing multiplayer, and then I eventually went back and played the campaign, if memory serves correct. So, like, because I knew all about those multiplayer details, and I just couldn't wait to get in, and lo and behold, you know, it was a great time. However, the cool part was that I was, you know, in a friendly way, talking shit to my best friend, saying, you know, if you boot your stuff up, I'll play you 1v1 and I'll beat you. But even though I didn't win that night, I think he was using SitRep Pro, by the way. But even though I didn't win that night, right? He actually told me that he was actually genuinely surprised that he was having a hard time with me. So for me, that always meant like, yes, I'm getting better, because he was always the best Halo player. Now, obviously, Halo and COD are not the same, but you know the deal. I mean, granted, the last time we played together in Call of Duty was back in Call of Duty Ghosts, and let's just say that was at a time where I, you know, had totally like understood how to play COD. So let's just say it was a lot better. I was the one who actually would carry him, you know, game after game after game. I was the player who ended up being first game after game after game. And it was a really surreal experience to see, because he in Halo would always be the first, or even in COD, he would always score higher than me back during the days of Black Ops 1 and Modern Warfare 3 whenever we played. And lo and behold, after all that time of spending playing COD and devoting myself to it, I finally ended up being the one who would actually carry him whenever we played together. So I thought it was pretty interesting. You know, he's obviously moved away from games like COD and Halo now. He's gotten into different games. But with that being said, and he's also a PC player now. That's when I first started thinking about PC, is when I saw him switch, but that wouldn't happen for years later. And fun story to add on to this before we go, he actually gave me his old PC rig, which is now in storage, that obviously still works, before I got this PC that I'm making content and streaming on now and playing on now. He gave me his old rig for a discounted price, but it helped me because my laptop that I'd gotten from Walmart was no longer good enough to create content on. And, you know, he gave me the option for the PC, and I ended up paying him like a year later, even though it wasn't that much, but it was still, you know, a decent amount. I ended up paying him off like a year later, but he didn't care. He's just like, yeah, you can have it, you know, and it worked, and it came in handy. And it was the first PC that I ever used, period. When it came to whether it was playing, you know, older games on mouse and keyboard or whatever. I mean, you could play games, but it just wasn't the most powerful rig. But yeah, I believe it was that system to where I first did that, and then obviously it came in handy for content creation. So I, yet again, even all those years later, he had my back. And this was like 3 years ago, because I'd gotten this PC that you see now 2 years ago, and it was a year prior or a year and a half prior to where he gave me his PC. So you're talking like 3.5 years ago or so at the most, to where he offered to give me his old rig. So yeah, he's it just goes to show you, man, he's always had my back. And my best friends, you know, your true best friends will always have your back. But we're not just talking about things like video games, but we're talking about in life, which is true in that case for him as well. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for him, there would have been a lot of things that I wouldn't have experienced growing up when it came to games, because of because of my current situation back then. But anyway, but yeah, that was my cool little midnight release story, as well as the origins of the Justice X7 account and the meaning behind the X7. So with that being said, I want to know down in the comment section, for those of you guys that are interested in sharing, I want to know what your favorite midnight release story is. And at the same time, I also wanted to say happy birthday to Halo 2, the GOAT of console online multiplayer shooters. It is the game that set the tone, and, you know, games like Call of Duty, including COD 4 and beyond, I don't think they would have had the kind of success or inspiration that they did if it wasn't for Halo 2, because Halo 2 was the first game to do what it did, and it succeeded. It was the first one to set all those kinds of records. It was when the whole midnight release took on a whole other meaning, and it was a really, really great time to be a gamer. And I don't know if the midnight release thing still happens because of consoles, but I think that our days are limited when it comes to, when the whole midnight release thing is just going to go away, period. Because we're at a time, unfortunately, now to where things like E3 no longer exist. And that was something that I've always wanted to do one time, take a vacation time if I could to go to E3, because it was something I always wanted to do in person. But unfortunately, that is no longer an option now. So the question is, when is that going to happen for midnight releases? So anyway, guys, with that being said, I want to know your story, if you're willing to share, down in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.